It was terrible. I still have a heartache that it ended so badly, this wonderful thing that Joyce DeWitt to this day doesn't talk to me.
In the wild world of 1970s TV, no show was bigger than Three's Company. It was a true phenomenon, a show that pushed the envelope with its racy jokes and captured America's heart with its three lovable roommates. On screen, Jack, Janet, and Chrissy were the perfect TV family, a mix of slapstick comedy, real friendship, and just a little bit of chaos. Their chemistry was electric, one of those rare moments in television that defines an entire era. But behind all the laughter and mix-ups, a completely different story was playing out. It was a story of ambition, betrayal, and a bitter feud that would shatter the illusion of their friendship and cast a long shadow over the show's legacy. For decades, the silence between co-stars Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Somers was deafening, leaving fans guessing what really tore them apart. The official story was just a contract dispute, a simple clash of money and ego. But the truth, as it so often is in Hollywood, was way more complicated. For over 30 years, a painful silence was the only thing connecting Three's Company. Stars Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Somers. On TV, they were best friends, but behind the scenes, a nasty contract dispute made them strangers. While Suzanne went on to build a massive business empire, Joyce never said a word about the fight that destroyed one of television's most iconic trios. But now, Joyce has finally opened up about the truth of what really happened, and her perspective changes everything. This was never just about a contract. It was a story about two completely different women, their opposite views on life, and the ruthless Hollywood machine that turned them against each other. To really get why the breakup was so bad, you have to understand just how good things were at the start. When Three's Company hit the airwaves on March 15, 1977, it was an immediate smash hit. The premise, based on a British sitcom, was pretty daring for the time. A man, Jack Tripper, has to pretend he's gay to live with two single women, Janet Wood and Chrissy Snow. On conservative 70s television, this was groundbreaking stuff, and the show's humor relied almost entirely on sexual innuendo and wild misunderstandings. The undeniable heart of the show was the chemistry between the three leads. John Ritter, as the clumsy, girl-crazy chef Jack, was a genius of physical comedy. Suzanne Somers, playing the bubbly blonde Chrissy Snow, quickly became the show's breakout star and a national sweetheart. And then there was Joyce DeWitt, the best, smart, sensible Janet Wood, who acted as the voice of reason in all the chaos. DeWitt was the anchor. While Ritter brought the pratfalls and Somers brought the sex appeal, DeWitt brought a grounded, relatable energy that held the group together, and the public fell in love hard. Three's Company rocketed to the top of the ratings, becoming the #2 show in the country during the 1978-79 season. They were on every magazine cover, their faces were on lunchboxes, and their weekly antics were the talk of the town. For 4 seasons, Ritter, DeWitt, and Somers created a world that felt like a safe escape for viewers, a place where any problem could be solved with a laugh. They were America's favorite roommates, and it felt like the magic would never end. But even in those golden years, the cracks were starting to show. The differences between the two leading ladies weren't just on screen. Joyce DeWitt was a classically trained actress. She started doing stage plays at 13 and earned a Master of Fine Arts from UCLA. For DeWitt, acting was a craft, an art form. She was uncomfortable with being a celebrity and tried to stay out of the spotlight. Suzanne Somers, however, was driven by something different but just as valid: business. As a single mom trying to support her son, she saw her career as a way to provide. She embraced her celebrity, seeing photo shoots and publicity as part of the job. This fundamental difference, art versus commerce, privacy versus publicity, created a quiet friction. An incident with a Newsweek cover shoot really highlighted the divide, where a solo photo of Somers was allegedly superimposed over a group shot. The move caused tension and reportedly made DeWitt feel lied to and wary of. publicity. They were two women on very different journeys, bound together by a hit show but heading in opposite directions. The tension finally exploded at the start of the show's 5th season in 1980. On the surface, the fight was about money, but it was. Tangled up in gender inequality, bruised egos, and the brutal politics of network television. By then, Suzanne Somers was undeniably the show's biggest star. Her character, Chrissy Snow, was a pop culture icon. So, recognizing her market value, Somers and her husband-manager, Alan Hamill, decided it was time to demand a raise, and it was a huge demand. She asked for her pay to be jumped from $30,000 an episode to $150,000 plus 10% of the show's profits. This number wasn't pulled out of thin air. It was meant to put her on the same level as top male TV stars of the era, like her co-star John Ritter. While reports on Ritter's salary vary, Somers believed he was making that much, and she wanted equal pay. Years later, Somers framed her demand as a feminist act. "I didn't plan to be the unofficial first feminist when I demanded equal pay," she said. Her husband claimed the producers wanted to make an example of her to stop other actresses from asking for more. He even recounted a chilling late-night phone call from a source who warned him, "They have decided to hang a nun in the marketplace, and Suzanne Somers is going to be it." The message was clear. This wasn't just a negotiation, it was a threat. But the producers and her co-stars saw it very differently. From their point of view, Somers was breaking her contract. The three stars had all signed on for 7 years. By demanding a new deal in the middle of it, she was holding up production and putting the entire show at risk. To make matters worse, John Ritter's contract reportedly had a clause that said he had to be the highest-paid actor on the show. This meant the network legally couldn't give Somers what she wanted, a fact Ritter felt she should have known. And this is where the story splits. Was Suzanne a trailblazer fighting for equal pay? Or was she an actress, pushed by an aggressive manager, who overplayed her hand and threatened everyone's jobs? For Joyce DeWitt, who came from an ensemble theater background, it felt like a betrayal of the team. The producers allegedly fanned the flames, feeding information to Ritter and DeWitt that painted Somers as greedy. The Happy Family was officially at war. ABC and the producers refused to budge, but instead of just firing her, they chose a route that was both petty and psychologically brutal. The network's response to the standoff was cold and calculated. Somers was essentially fired, but because of her contract, she still had to appear on the show. So the producers came up with a cruel solution. They isolated her from the entire cast. The writers were told to write Chrissy out of the main storyline, having her call home from Fresno, where she was caring for her sick mother. Her screen time was cut to a brief 60-second tag at the end of each episode, usually just a phone call. This created a bizarre and toxic work environment. Somers filmed all of her scenes completely alone on a separate set. She wasn't allowed to interact with the rest of the cast. To enforce the separation, she was reportedly escorted to and from the soundstage by a police guard. The woman who was once the heart of the show was now treated like a total outcast. The cheerful apartment set, once a symbol of friendship, became a place of deep resentment. The whole mood turned sour. The cast and crew were angry about the constant disruptions and rewrites. Don Knotts, who played the landlord Mr. Furley, often had to absorb the jokes originally written for Chrissy. This creative chaos only fueled the anger towards Somers. For Joyce DeWitt, this was an agonizing time. The trust between the cast was gone. Believing the producer's narrative that Somers was being selfish, DeWitt and Ritter reportedly stopped, speaking to her entirely. The on-screen friendship was now a complete lie. While Jack and Janet were warmly chatting on the phone with their best friend Chrissy, the actors playing them were strangers, separated by studio walls and a massive gulf of anger. The joyous set of Three's Company had become a miserable place to be. When Summers's contract was finally up, the crew allegedly held a mock funeral for her character. Chrissy Snow was officially gone, and so was the friendship between Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers. A wall of silence went up between them that would last for more than 30 years. The story of Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers is a complicated mess of business, ambition, and broken trust. It brings up a question fans have argued about for decades. Was Suzanne right to demand more money, or should she have stuck to her contract? Whose side were you on? Let us know in the comments. And if you love these hidden Hollywood stories, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next. Now back to the years of silence. After Suzanne Summers' bitter exit in 1981, she and Joyce DeWitt began a long and total silence. For the next 31 years, they didn't speak or see each other once. Their lives went in completely different directions, each path perfectly reflecting the philosophies that had driven them apart. Suzanne Summers, after being made an example of by Hollywood, found herself blacklisted. But true to her nature, she refused to disappear. She reinvented herself. She became a Las Vegas headliner, even being named Entertainer of the Year, alongside Frank Sinatra in 1987. Then, in 1990, she became the spokesperson for the Thigh Master. And the rest is history. The device was a massive success, turning Summers into a fitness mogul. She built a huge empire of health products, beauty lines, and over 25 books. She even returned to sitcoms with the hit show, Step by Step. Looking back, Summers saw getting fired as a blessing. None of that would have happened. Had I stayed with that show, she said. She turned a career disaster into a multi-million-dollar empire, proving she was, first and foremost, a brilliant businesswoman. Joyce DeWitt's life after Three's Company was the total opposite. She stayed with the show until it ended in 1984, remaining loyal to the project that made her famous. But after the show wrapped, she made a conscious choice to leave the Hollywood spotlight behind. She was never comfortable with the fame anyway. I really never wanted any attention, she later admitted. I just tried to hide as much as possible. She went back to her first love, the theater. For years, she performed in plays all across the country, focusing on her craft instead of celebrity. She took a long break from TV, traveled the world, and eventually settled down for a while in New Mexico. While Summers was building a brand, DeWitt was building a private life of artistic fulfillment. She also poured her time into charity work for hunger and homelessness. Her path wasn't about building an empire. It was about quiet contribution and artistic integrity. Throughout these 3 decades, the feud became legendary, but the two women stayed firmly in their separate worlds. Then, after 31 years of nothing, the impossible happened. In February 2012, Joyce DeWitt agreed to be a guest on Suzanne Summers' web series, Breaking Through. Fans were floored. The reunion nobody thought would ever happen was finally here. The tension was so thick you could feel it through the screen. "It's been over 30 years since Joyce and I have seen each other," Summers said as she introduced the segment, "so I have to admit I'm a little nervous." When DeWitt walked on set, the two women, now in their 60s, just looked at each other for a moment before sharing a long, emotional hug. As they sat down, the conversation that followed was honest, raw, and incredibly revealing. And it was here that Joyce DeWitt, for the very first time, told Summers her side of the story directly. Summers kicked things off with an apology. "I always saw this as a business venture, in a group of serious actors. I probably pissed you all off," she admitted. "If I did, I'm really sorry. I just really needed money at the time." That one sentence seemed to cut through 30 years of anger, framing her actions not as ego, but as a mom trying to secure her son's future. DeWitt's response was just as powerful. When asked why she finally agreed to come on the show, she said, simply, "It's time." She explained that for 30 years, whenever people brought up the drama, she always said the same thing. Three's Company is worth remembering because it gave us all a chance to laugh together, to celebrate joy. It's a profound gift. By sitting there with Summers, she was finally living that truth. In that chat, Joyce finally admitted the feud wasn't about personal hate, but a fundamental disagreement on what it meant to be an actor. She told Summers she respected what she'd accomplished. "You went up against ruthlessness and it came down," she said, acknowledging the powerful forces they were up against. Then she paid her a huge compliment. "What you've gone on to do is immeasurable." They also talked warmly about their late co-star, John Ritter, who had passed away in 2003, bonding over their shared love for their friend. It wasn't about blaming each other anymore. It was about two women, older and wiser, finally seeing things from the other's perspective. They walked away, maybe not as best friends, but no longer as enemies. They had found peace. The 2012 reunion finally brought public closure to one of Hollywood's longest-running feuds. While Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers didn't exactly become close, they found a mutual respect. The painful silence was replaced by a quiet peace. That peace became incredibly poignant when, in October 2023, Suzanne Summers passed away after a long fight with breast cancer, just a day before her 77th birthday. With Summers's passing, Joyce DeWitt, then 74 and the last surviving member of the original trio, was asked to reflect on their complicated past. Her words were no longer guarded. They were full of grace, forgiveness, and a deep appreciation for the joy they once created. In a heartfelt statement, she focused on Suzanne's family. "My heart goes out to Suzanne's family," DeWitt said. "They are a very close family. I can only imagine how difficult this time is for all of them." Her statement showed just how much healing had happened. The bitterness was gone, replaced by a wise and compassionate perspective. In later reflections, DeWitt acknowledged that they were both just navigating pressures no one on the outside could ever understand. Suzanne was fighting for what she saw as fair pay in a sexist industry, while Joyce was trying to protect the harmony of the creative family she loved. Neither was completely wrong, but their inability to talk to each other directly allowed the rift to last for decades. Looking back, their story isn't just about a contract. It's a cautionary tale about the pressures of fame and how easily friends can be turned into enemies by powerful people. But in the end, it's a story about resolution. The final truth from Joyce DeWitt is that the feud was rooted in business, not personal hate. By choosing to celebrate the joy they created, she didn't just end a feud. She rewrote the final chapter of their story. It's a story no longer defined by conflict, but by the grace that finally brought them back together.